Uh, Rusty, I'm really glad you were able to join us here at Journey in Studios. Welcome
Happy to
to
be
our
here, yeah.
welcome to our program.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be back.
You know, we're here sitting in our projection room, which we can show to an audience of 40 or 50 people. And I thought this, while we're waiting to see something, that maybe we could catch up on what's going on in the Catholic Church.
Oh, a small topic.
It'll fill an auditorium more than 40 or 50 people.
Yes, it certainly would.
Well, I was particularly, it's particularly important, this type of discussion in New York, because New York is very populous with Catholics. In fact, Manhattan has more Catholics per square mile than any other city in the United States. Manhattan it's got about, I'd say this 13,000 Catholics per square mile.
You really see it on Ash Wednesday. You really realize how Catholic the city is. People lined up to get ashes, the line snaking around the block. So I think I agree with you. People don't realize how Catholic Manhattan is. And then you add, the workers that come in from the outer boroughs on the workday. I think it's quite a number of folk.
That could double the number probably. Then it accounts for a really large attendance at St. Patrick's. Also, a lot of people from around the world.
Yes, yeah, I go occasionally to Mass at St. Patrick's, because they have it's convenient to my home. Good 8 a.m. Mass, get it out of the way on Sunday morning. And you're right, you see people from really all over. And most of them are tourists coming, and they really are thrilled to be able to go to Mass, because New York's kind of the center of culture and media here in the United States, and so it's a kind of thrilling to be able to express your Catholic faith in the center of the universe.
Well, the Metropolitan Museum a couple of years ago had a big display called Heavenly Bodies. It was part of their Costume Institute.
Yes.
And they brought a lot of Catholic designers and Catholic objects from the Vatican. They had more people at that exhibit than at any museum exhibit in the world.
Oh, fascinating.
It is.
I had no idea.
Oh, it blew them out of the water. And I had the curator, and she said, well, I never really knew. We didn't know what we were getting into.
Yeah, religion, it really kind of matters for a lot of people. Surprise, surprise.
Well, it really matters to, we have a lot of Catholic media here in Manhattan and in New York as a whole. We have several prominent magazines. 1stThings, your own, which is more on the conservative side, I would say.
Yes, fair.
And it's ecumenical. It has other...
I tell people who say it's a Catholic magazine, I say, no. We're not merely Catholic, but we're definitely very Catholic.
Yeah, I think that...
We have Protestant writers and Jewish writers, but I think it's fair to say that it's an influential publication in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I think so. And then we have America Magazine.
Yeah, Jesuit magazine, been around for more than 100 years.
A little bit on the left. Always on the left.
Sometimes.
And then Commonweal has been a stalwart for a long time. And then we have various, archdioceses, Good News, and we have the Tablet in Brooklyn, and we have various TV and radio. And I noticed even the Canadian Catholics have an office on Manhattan where they generate news about Catholicism in America. I guess they
know more about the Catholic media scene than I do.
Well, I want to catch up with you, though, because you wrote recently your evaluation, in looking forward to the new papal regime, your evaluation of Pope Francis. And I'm sure it caused a flutter among some people. You said that Pope Francis had lots of attention, but in the end was ineffectual. Did you get much kickback from that statement?
Oh, some. But what I was trying to say is that you had this very volatile, verbally kind of inventive fellow. Could really grab the headlines. Some very salty things that he would sometimes say in his papal audiences, or even more so when he was on airplanes.
That was the best place to catch him.
That seemed to be 10,000. Pressurized cabinet seemed to bring out the inner Pope Francis. But I think that overall he would. There was a joke about General Perón. So he's Pope Francis from Argentina. He had a Peronist quality to him. And the joke about General Perón is he's coming to a T intersection, and the chauffeur leans back and says, General, should I turn left or should I turn right? And Perón says, signal left, turn right. And there's a lot of that in this pontificate. It was quite hard to read exactly where it was all going. So my sense is that with his death, his personality, which really filled, I think, the media space, that would recede, obviously it's gone, and his actual teachings didn't really add up to something that had a real long-term influence on the church. So I think the new guy has a relatively blank slate on which to write his own script.
But in his first declaration to the College of Cardinals, he says, what am I going to do? And he says, well, the 4 or 5 things from Vatican II that Pope Francis emphasized, I'm going to emphasize and continue. So is he just a continuation of Pope Francis, and is he going to be ineffectual?
Oh, no. I mean, it is common, and in fact expected, for the successor to take up and establish continuity of teaching. That's one of the fundamental, really, obligations of the Pope, is to be a sign of the continuity of the church, the unity of the church and the continuity of the church. And so I think that his statements were meant in good faith and are sincere, but that this will evolve according to his own discernment of what the church needs in the 21st century. And we already see that he's particularly interested in technology and artificial intelligence, and the way that is going to be reshaping not just the workplace, but society and culture at large. So he wants to think about that. And there's also a question of style. I mean, he's a mathematician, and I think he has a very orderly mind. I think his predecessor, Pope Francis, was a man who really relied on his intuitions, and which could be quite volatile. And so I think with Pope Leo, we're going to get a steadier, maybe less explosive, maybe less media grabbing pontificate, but I think will probably be more methodical and lay the foundation for what God willing, will be a long pontificate. He's not an old man.
Well, two things I'm thinking about. One, just an aside, that Pope Francis, yes, was more extemporaneous, but he loved mathematics. If you look, he all the time, geometry. He all the time talked about the geometry of faith.
An image.
Well,
he was a brilliant.
He kept talking about it, though.
Brilliant. The priests need to smell like their sheep. I mean, he was a very good meme maker, and I think that it's very funny. He and Donald Trump have a lot in common. They're both kind of populist figures who really flummox many of the kind of establishment figures in the church. Pope Francis, I think, could exasperate those who wanted a steady, methodical figure, and also just this flair for coming up with these arresting formulations.
One thing that you meant, one reason that Pope Francis was ineffectual, you suggested, was because he didn't read the times right. That Vatican II came at a different period of time in which there was a new emphasis on this global system, on humanism and personalism.
Yes.
I think you mentioned one other thing out of there, that he was orientating to those and deconstructing boundaries.
Yes.
He was orientated to inherit the historical analysis of Vatican II, which says right at the beginning, this is the way the world is. And you say, no, the world has changed, and we have to do something different. And I wonder if you could talk a little about that. You also have this idea that we were in an age of deconstruction, and now maybe we're in the age of construction.
Yes, or deconsolidation, reconsolidation. kind of rung the changes on this theme in a number of things I've written. But John the 23rd, he was the Pope that called the Second Vatican Council. He famously said it's time to open the windows of the church. And I don't gainsay that. I mean, I was born in 1959, but I certainly wasn't conscious of the church in that era. But everyone reports from older generation a kind of clotted, insular fortress mentality, and the need to open up. But by the time you get to 2025, I think so much of the institutions in our society have disintegrated. And so it isn't that we have these overbearing, immobile institutions. We have feeble and failing institutions. And so Pope Francis would talk about the church as a field hospital. I understood his impulse. The church needs to minister to all people, but especially those most in need of the medicine of grace. But a field hospital is a very insubstantial thing, kind of a tent. And I think we live in an age where people are hungering for a rock, something that's enduring, the ark of salvation, not the rowboat of salvation, so to speak. And I think you see that in young people. They're attracted to ancient liturgies and ritual, things that bespeak deep roots, because they live in a liquid world. And in this liquid world, you just are exhausted because you're treading water at all times. You're seeking some solid land. So dogma, strong institutional identity. So my sense is Pope Francis was misreading the signs of the times. He was too much a captive to an earlier generation's experience of not just the church, but the world more broadly.
Maybe.
And it could be that Pope Leo, he's younger.
Yes.
He's a little older than I am. But he may have a better sense, because he came of age and was formed in the 70s, which was
They call him the Boomer Pope.
Yeah, but he came of age and was formed in the 70s, and that was the era in the church when things were going really crazy after the council, and all kinds of people were trying to carry things, the spirit of Vatican II, to the most extreme degrees. So he may have a sense that you have to find the proper balance between a kind of flexibility and openness and a kind of clear grounding and stability and sense of solidity.
Well, let me push back on that a little bit. I'm really interested in this. You call it, I said period of deconstruction and reconstruction. What do you call it?
Deconsolidation and reconsolidation.
Reconsolidation. Yes, there was a need for you call it deconsolidation?
Yeah, because and if you were born, in peak
50s.
baby boomer,
Yeah.
you're born in 1946.
Yeah.
So you come of age in the 1950s, your adolescence, 3 TV stations, everybody's, top 40 radio. We reached peak demographic homogeneity in America in 1970, less than 3% of the population non-native born. So, I came at the tail end of that, born in 1959. So, and you're in my experience of our social world was this very homogeneous, strong middle-class morality, very punitive, rigorous kind of sexual discipline and all those things. Well, things started to loosen up in the 60s.
Yes.
And then it really took off. And we now, if we look at demography, we're at peak, really back to the 1920s, where something like 14 to 15% of the population of the country is not born here.
And that means what?
Well, it just means that the society is less homogeneous, less unified. Institutions are more, the family is, is very much weakened. The institution of family, marriage, everything from Boy Scouts to the local church school, it just has much less of a unifying influence on young people. So they come of age. So you're born now, if you're a Gen Zer, you basically have come in age where there are very few trustworthy institutions. There are very few unifying experiences. I mean, the internet's only made it even more fragmented. You find your affinity groups.
And you think that the younger generation, like the Generation Z,
They take nothing for granted. They think everything
but
is up for grabs.
But they feel it as sort of anguish. They're looking for something
Well,
solid.
we know that their mental health is in the toilet. I mean, partly is that you turn everything into an option, even whether you're a man or a woman, it's an option. And you'd be surprised. We're surprised that people are kind of like, whoa, I'm disoriented. I don't know even where I stand. So the church then becomes attractive insofar as it says, well, it's an institution of authority, and it's a trustworthy authority. It's unchanging, it's ancient.
So you call this not construction, but
Reconsolidation.
Reconsolidation. Okay. Okay. So you're now talking about putting the pieces back together.
Correct.
Okay.
Thickening as opposed to thinning.
I want to come back to you because this is not the first time you've mentioned this duality.
No, I mean, it kind of, like I said, I've been ringing the changes on this for the last 3 or 4
But
years,
I wonder,
or 5 years, or 6
yeah,
years.
I think so.
I mean, my Return of the Strong Gods book is basically the...
And I wonder,
that
yeah, I
thesis
wanted
in
to
a
go
different
back
form.
to, this type of dual historical change. The
Well,
dynamo and
let's not steal our thunder. Well, otherwise I won't be spontaneous.
That's right.
Okay.
Are we about ready?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Well, hey, we can keep on going here. We got a little bit more space.
Oh, good. Good.
I noticed that with this sort of historical periodization that you do,
Yeah.
that we're going from deconsolidation to reconsolidation. And this type of dualism has been a sort of a characteristic of your writing about the ages for a while. I was wondering, were you inspired from any theological or philosophical dualism? Because you've got the dynamo and the machine and all
Right.
this.
Yeah, the Virgin and the Dynamo.
Yeah,
That's
the
Henry
Virgin and
Adams.
Dynamo. Yes.
Well, there's something to that. I hadn't thought about that actually as an element. I mean, Adams thought, but that was a deeper perennial tension in the human heart between, our technological, machine-like minds and our romantic, imaginative hearts, which I think is perennial. It's Pascal talks about it. Whereas my idea really has more to do with thinking about the 20th century and our experience of what I think is a civilizational catastrophe, World War I, World War II, which sparked a reaction against what were seen to be the causes of this terrible, terrible catastrophe. Mm-hmm. And people thought it was a kind of over-consolidated, overzealous, over-committed, overly ideological nationalism or communism or what have you, Nazism, and that the solution was to tone down and loosen up, open up, mm-hmm. loosen up. And that I think was, for my lifetime, that was the balm that was applied to life's, the society's problems.
How did that overlap with the increased secularization of society?
Well, of course, God is the great consolidator, if you will, because
okay.
the authority of God is, is a kind of the rigid designator, the immovable object. Mm-hmm. And if you want to have a more fluid and flexible world, then you're going to have to marginalize and privatize religion, as certainly was the case in the post-World War II era.
Now, something we have noticed at A Journey is that starting in around 1978, unknowns to most of us, there was an increased number of religious congregations being founded, mm-hmm. and there were an increased number of people going to the Catholic Church, though there was such an exodus at that point, we didn't necessarily see the entrance of a lot of Hispanics and others in the Catholic Church. But there started to grow in New York a religious presence, a religious visibility that hadn't been seen in ages.
Well, wouldn't you say that what happened is that just the presumptive kind of Christendom mentality eroded, and what emerged were kind of more visible, committed forms, mm-hmm. more vital, intentional forms. I mean, Pope Benedict, when he was after the Second Vatican Council, I think he wrote something in the early 70s where he said the future of the church would be smaller and more faithful. So you get cultural Christianity erodes, and our view of the dominant view of life becomes more secular, but those who remain religious become more visible in that context.
And that's affecting the city. I mean, the visibility of faith, the visibility of newly seeing Catholics, some Catholics doing street evangelism. Down over at Old St. Patrick's, I ran across this guy who was handing out rosaries in the street and says, we want you to come in.
Catholics can learn something from evangelicals.
Well, here's a little secret.
Little street evangelization is not such a bad thing.
Here's a little secret. The evangelicals actually learned from the Catholics too, because the Paulist brothers at their location up there near Fordham University at Lincoln Center, at that church in the 50s, they taught a school of street evangelism.
Yes.
I was so blown away that, and a lot of evangelicals went there to learn.
If you go to, you don't see it so much here in New York, but if you go to European capitals, you'll get African Christians evangelizing on street corners. In fact, I was in Berlin, and there was a group. It looked like a family of Kenyans who were, in German, calling these passersby to make a confession of faith. Yeah. And so it's part of the mystery of God's providence that Christianity is missionaries from Europe go to Africa and convert the continent, and now the Africans are coming back to Europe to convert Europe back again.
They sure are. That's right.
Like I say, we don't see that, but I think you're certainly in the work you've done, you've really documented the way that patterns of immigration have profoundly influenced the shape of Christianity in New York and renewed it and given it a vitality. And I think for those kind of Anglo types like me, it's an inspiration and also a challenge. Like, hey, man up.
Yes, that's right.
Live up to you say that you have faith, and you look at many people in these immigrant congregations, and it's just astounding the degree of their intensity of their piety. Why can't I, also, measure up? Why do I have to be so, keep my faith private, or, be satisfied with something lukewarm? So I think it's been a great spur of religious life in New York.
You mentioned something earlier that I've seen in statistics we've done on Catholics in New York. You mentioned Pope Benedict said, well, as we shrink down, we get to a point where we become stronger because we have those people that are really devoted, really focused. It is true, the Catholic Church in New York has shrunk down quite a bit. However, it seems to have stopped. And it keeps trying to make a kick upward, and in fact there are some signs of that. Though it's still pulled back by various financial and also scandals and other things that distract, but actually people are saying in Pew did a national survey, and also here in New York, that people are not so concerned about some of the past problems we have. They're focused on their faith. And I wonder, do you think that the Catholic Church in New York has turned a corner?
Oh, definitely. As I see it, the Catholic Church, the infrastructure of the church in New York City, the infrastructure was designed and built for ethnic Catholicism. Migrations in the late 19th century into the 20th century and ongoing in the 20th century. And those communities, urban communities, neighborhoods, the Italian Catholic Church, the Irish Catholic Church, the Croatian Catholic Church, the Hungarian Catholic Church. In other words, every ethnic group had their parish.
Yes.
And the whole neighborhood was organized around their parish. Well, that world of ethnic Catholic New York is gone. And so our infrastructure, for a long time, the church had a hard time reorienting itself. But I think by the time we get to 2025, I think everybody's very clear-minded. And the church is much more now connected to the reality of the people who are in the pews. And part of that is closing some churches that are superfluous because they're in neighborhoods where they're I used to live in Omaha, Nebraska. They're all lined up, like one block from each other.
Yes, that's right.
You know, Lithuanian church. And so does that really make sense in the 21st century? No. So I do think when you have your institution and the reality of the people in the pews comes into better accord, we're going to get just better results. Because the leadership and I do not envy the Archbishop, because he has to oversee the downsizing
That's right.
of this huge Catholic infrastructure, and so he only sees the sad part of this process, and he doesn't have time to see the happy part, which is all the new stuff that's happening in the midst of this incredible
what is some of the
city.
new stuff you have? What is some of the new stuff that you see happening just around your church and your
Well, I go
area?
to St. Vincent Ferro's, a Dominican parish on Upper East Side, and I mean, I went to Good Friday, the last words of Christ in Veneration of the Cross service at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was standing room only, and that church holds well over 1,000 people, probably holds 1,500 people.
Wow.
And who's there? Well, it's a strange combination, a lot of different kind of people, but there is a real hunger among professional New Yorkers. So these are the university class, the kids who come here from all over the country, really, seek their fortune, test themselves, financial industry, publishing, media, and what have you, tech now increasingly. And there's a certain percent of those young people that are looking for, like I say, the strong anchor of faith.
What's this cross street?
65th and Lex.
65th and Lex. So there's several universities. Of course, Hunter College is there, but you've also got over there at
But
on
another
the
one,
island and
another place is St. John's in the Village, which is.
oh really?
Oh yes, that's another. It's a Dominican parish, and they have, they have a really vital young cohort that go there. So I think that we're in a time of really it's not growth in some kind of explosive way, but there's a deepening and an expanding world of Catholic faithful in New York today.
Here in New York. Thanks for stopping by. I want to show you the rest of what we've got going on here.
Well, thanks for having me on the show.
And it's really good to catch up. Thanks.
Good.
I'm Tony Carnes, your host for A Journey Through NYC Religious Television, and I'm here with Rusty Reno, the esteemed editor of 1stThings magazine. Thank you very much.